Okay, so what we have for you today is to talk about how to preserve your harvest, because you've been learning how to grow your food better, how to grow better and healthier food and make the best of your garden. And you work so hard, believe me, I know what it's like to work hard in the garden. You work so hard, you want to be able to know how to can and preserve it so that you can eat it through the winter. And you want to be able to do it healthfully and not have everything go off on you or just not sure what to do with it. And so you want to learn how to make the most of that, because, you know, in Spirit of Prophecy, in the beginning of that book, there's a quote where she talks about that in the last days, you know, that's what we've been talking about coming out of the cities. If you have even a little piece of land where you can grow your own provisions, then you will be like kings and queens. And, you know, in growing your own provisions, we have the winter time here. You need something, way to hold your food to last through the winter. And so that's what we're trying to tell to be able to show everyone. And first, I will go over some of the different equipment that there is for the canning process, because that's what we're doing. The majority of is doing some canning. So you want to take it off my ears, or just can I just take it? Okay. We appreciate all your patience. Okay. All right, so at the display table here, and afterwards you can take a look, we have things that you would, in that basket in the corner, we have things, the vegetables that you typically can put away in your root cellar. You've got carrots and beets and squash and potatoes and onions and garlic. Well, I think the onions and garlic are kind of hiding. Yeah, and but those are the types of things you can put up in your root cellar. And but then for your canning, I have some home canned peaches here and pears and wild plums, as well as sweet plums and applesauce. And we're going to be doing some applesauce today and some pickles. And so there's lots of things that you can and preserve and then eat through the winter. We eat, you know, a lot of this. You know, the last year I did 12 bushels of apples because we love applesauce, and I think we're down to our last box. So
check.
we eat a lot of it through the winter. And how many of you have tasted home canned peaches?
After 4 years.
There's a bunch of you here that's never tasted home canned peaches. This is wrong. This is just not right. I might just have to open up one of those jars and you guys have to sample some at the lunch break, because there's nothing like home canned peaches. We had some friends from California come and visit us, and it was right during peaching time. And they'd only ever had Del Monte. Okay, so then I can...
Just a second.
Not yet. Okay, as long as I don't get zapped, then I'm okay. Is the other one, turn the other one off, or? Okay. All right, so I'll just try to ignore that. Okay, and they came up and we showed them the peaches, and that was it. It's because they had driven up, they went and bought a couple boxes of jars and got a bushel of peaches, and I taught her how to can them, and they went home, and now she cans every year. So, you know, it's wonderful. We make a wonderful smoothie in the wintertime, or even in the summer. It's some coconut milk, some home canned peaches, and whatever frozen fruit you want, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, and it makes the best smoothie. And it's so good for you. Okay, so we have those. And another way that you can save, that you can preserve your food is, say you dry food on the dehydrator. We have a dehydrator up here, and I put some zucchinis on it. Sure. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting I don't have the corded one. Oh, they are nice. Okay, so guess what, everyone? We get to sample some zucchini chips at the end of it, because it's going to be lunchtime. So if you want to try some zucchini chips, they're easy to make. I sliced them up last night, and I sprinkled a little bit of sea salt on them. And you put them in the dehydrator, and the next day at lunch, you've got chips. And they keep well. You put them, you take them right off the dehydrator, put them in a jar, let them cool, put them in a jar, close it up so it's sealed from the air, and they keep for quite a long time. So drying is a fantastic way. And another thing that you can do, we have a food saver. And what this does is it vacuum seals. Another way you can do that, the poor man's food saver, is just to take a straw in your little Ziploc bag and suck out all the air and close it up real quick. That's one way, but a food saver closes it up and seals it without any air. So that's another way that you can preserve your food. Okay, so what we have going here, I don't know if you can smell it, but we've got apples cooking. and we're going to be making applesauce. But first I wanted to talk to you about this contraption. A lot of people, how many people are a little bit scared about pressure canners? Okay, there's good reason to be. There's a lot of pressure in there. And so you want to know what you're doing. The difference, what you use pressure canners for and why you use, and what do you use water canners for, okay? So we've got to talk about the acidity level, and that's in the canning book as well. Vegetables are a lower acidity. They go in the pressure canner. It's a good rule of thumb because being vegetarian, you don't have to worry about meats and all those other things. Vegetables go in the pressure canner. Fruits go in the water bath. The only exception to that is your sauerkraut and your pickles and things like that that are cultured that can go in the canner because of the process of culturing it. It breaks down those things in the vegetables, and you can preserve them just through the water bath. But other than that, all your vegetables.
Tomatoes can kind of go either way as long as you.
Tomatoes can go either way, but I've never had a problem. I've always water bathed them. And the pressure canner does take more time because it takes time to build up the pressure, and then it takes time for the pressure to go down.
Heirloom tomatoes are all more acidic, so you don't have to worry, but they kind of say nowadays, because we have so many sweet varieties, that you should add some lemon juice, which will be in the book.
Yeah.
How much lemon juice to add to each jar.
Yeah.
But just to be on the safe side, because they are in the middle road, and especially now that we have all the sweet pink and yellow varieties and orange varieties are more sweet,
Yeah.
and don't have the same acidity that the old style tomatoes that are red tomatoes have. So you have to be a little safer with those.
Yes?
The heirloom brown ones, the brown tomatoes, what do they call?
If they're sweet,
Yeah.
the taste, you have to.
They don't taste sweet though.
The tangy ones, like the
I
real.
would say play it on the safe side.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lose when you've done all that work. Why do you want to lose?
A
that?
good
So,
rule of thumb that I go by is the red tomatoes.
really
They're
orangey
acidic.
red, like
A real.
it's not a pinky red.
No,
it's a,
the pinky red, the ones that start to leaning towards being kind of a light pink, like the ox hearts, those kinds of things, they're borderline. So I would put a little bit of lemon juice in them. But the red ones, you're fine. You would be fine with. I've never had a problem, but you could put in lemon anyways because it just helps. Just even a teaspoon of lemon or a tablespoon. But when you start getting into the really light pinks or the browns and the blacks and the oranges that are sweet, that kind of thing, I would just put some lemon juice in it as well.
for safety.
Just for safety. Okay, so with the pressure canner, there's two different kinds of pressure canners. There's the ones with a gauge, and then there's ones without a gauge. I have an old-fashioned one that's just without the gauge. It's with the weighted. I prefer them because the ones with the gauge tend to be not just more expensive, but they also, you have to recalibrate them every year to be accurate.
If you have one with a gauge, you can also get you can go online and you can go to the company that you got it from, and you can get a weighted set, like to switch it over.
To switch it over to if you have a gauge one already, you can. She's saying you can go to the company and they will often have the weighted thing that you can switch it and convert it over to. Because I prefer the weighted because it's plain and straightforward and simple. You don't have to recalibrate anything. So I'm putting the lid on it now, and it often has a twist thing to ensure a strong hold, so that when that pressure builds up, it's not going to pop off or anything, right? And you have a valve here that as the heat builds up there, I don't know if we can turn up the heat on this one, and that because as the pressure starts to build, we're going to start seeing steam come out of here, and then what I have here, what'll come with your canner, is these little weighted. So I have the knob, and then I have two weights. Okay? And usually for around where we are, most things are 10 pounds of pressure, which would be the one. Each of them are 5. So 5, 10, 15. Okay? No. And I'm not putting anything in the pressure canner this time for time's sake.
It takes a little longer with the pressure canner.
Yeah, it takes a little bit longer. So we already started heating it up and everything. It's just water in there. We didn't process something. But you would just, for your green beans, your peas, your corn, you would just, those, and your dried beans, when you the recipes are in there, then you can just put them into your pressure canner for the amount of time. So then you just wait. I'm just going to put that there. And you would just wait until you start seeing some steam coming up, and then you would put this on top, like it's beginning to bubble up there, it's beginning to come. And then when it's ready and at the right place, it'll start to rock. And that's when you set your timer. So if it was 40 minutes that you're cooking it, once it's rocking, you set your timer. Okay? And then once the timer's done, you just turn the heat off and don't touch it for a while, because the pressure will come down and you'll be able to check it with the pressure valve. Okay? So it's really actually quite simple. You don't play with it too much. You just, when the steam starts coming up, then you put that on and wait for it to start rocking. Okay, so we'll let that do that, and you'll see what that's like when it comes up. Now, we can take, what we're going to do, we'll take the applesauce off. So all I do, actually we'll come up here first. I'm really fancy when it comes, when you're doing 12 bushels of apples, you don't take time to do things really fancy. I don't peel my apples. I'll wash them in because if I get them from the wild, which we've got some wild apple trees along the fields, but if I get them from an apple orchard, I'll put them in a sink full of water with a little bit of white vinegar and let them soak and rinse them. And then I just put them in one of my big bowls. Oh, that's the other essential thing. You want to bring me a couple of big bowls? Every canning kitchen, I recommend, needs, you can never have enough metal bowls, especially big ones. I have some medium ones that I use especially for bread baking, but having huge ones like this, when you're doing peaches and you're doing applesauce and pears, I'm telling you, you're using all of your metal bowls. These are an excellent investment. They last forever and you use them for everything. So what I do when we're and you can get them in all kinds of sizes. It's nice to have smaller sizes because you can put the pits from the peach in the smaller bowls and skins, and then you're slicing into the other bowls. But when I do my apples, I just quarter them, take the stem off because that will clog into your food mill. So I take the stem off, that's all I do, and then I throw them into the pot. And then you start cooking it down. And the recipes there, you just add like a cup of water. Well, it depends on what size of pot you're doing. You add a little bit of water. And then you just cook it on medium until the apples keep cooking down. And I'll keep kind of throwing some more in as they cook down. You just keep stirring them. And then when they're good and soft, we put them through the food mill. So I'm actually going to get an assistant or two up here to start. Yeah, I'm going to be putting on strawberry jam next. Who likes strawberry jam? All right, we all love strawberry jam. That's the... Okay, I went and got a piece of grass in there. Okay, so now what I do now in the book, I used to use the regular. Yes, ma'am.
Does apple seeds have arsenic in it? Can you still use that?
I've never had a problem, and we're eating lots of. You know what? The food mill separates all of that.
The apple seeds go out.
The apple seeds go out. We don't eat the apple. So once you're cooking it in there, but then once you go through the food mill, the skins and the apple seeds all come out. So you don't end up eating that. Now, I used to use the regular, we only had the regular pectins out there. There was Certo, but for every 4 cups of berries, you're putting in 8 cups of sugar. I couldn't tolerate that, but even the Certo Light was 4 to 4. So 4 cups sugar for 4 cups berries, and that's still way too much. And then I came across something called Pomona Pectin. Has anyone heard of Pomona Pectin? Okay, Pomona Pectin is fantastic, and the resource list is there. It'll be in the canning book as well, and there are recipes in our canning book, because you don't have to use any sugar if you don't want to. It will still set up. It's just a citrus pectin, and it uses calcium water. And that's what this is. So here's the pectin here. It's just a little powder. And they give you calcium powder that you mix up with water. And you put it in. I'll show you the best way that I use to put it in, because they say in the recipe to mix it with the sweetener, put it in. But I find that it still lumps up, and I'll have pectin lumps.
It's best in the blender.
So I find it's best in the blender. And so what I do... Here, don't need that. Okay. Oh, dear. Okay, so the Pomona Pectin helps it to set up, and you don't have to use any sugar, or you can just use a little. So for 4 cups of berries, I'll put in anywhere from, like with honey, you can use a little bit less, like a half a cup of honey. Or if you want to use a raw sugar, then you can use a half a cup to a cup. Or you don't have, like I said, you don't have to use any at all. Go to your preference, but it will still set up and it will still keep, which is good.
And if you want to have no sweetener, and you want to
Yeah.
use stevia, I would suggest that if you're going to use stevia, that you add it after. So when you open the jar, just put to your desire and then stir it in, because during the cooking process, the stevia taste will kind of change. So, but you can use no sweetener. You can use juice sweetener.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to make
Yeah.
it without.
And that's what we have in the
anything
recipe book, is that, we have,
concentrated juice.
we'll have some of the best juice blends for different things, like peaches. Like what juice blends? Would pineapple juice or a blend of pineapple and apple or different things? That there's different juice blends that work more complementary to the different fruits. And so if you just want to use juices for canning your peaches and things, and that, so we've got all of those things that'll be in there, which is really great, because then you're even healthier, and you've got it all at your. Okay, so now I've got the strawberry jam. I have 6 cups of strawberries here. So what you do, let's see, where's my teaspoon? Right there. I want to open. So I put the calcium water in the pot with the fruit, and I'm going to put the pectin. I think it's 3 in there. And then what you do is it just blends it. I just found it this way, and so if you still want to have some chunky jam, you don't you don't blend it all. You just need a couple cups worth and blend it. If you want to blend your whole jam, that's fine. But we like to have a little bit of more whole pieces of fruit and texture and stuff. Okay. There, it's as simple as that. I'll pick him up later. He wants to run away. Okay. I have a spatula there. And then we're going to heat that up. Okay. So jams are really a great place to start when you're wanting to learn canning. It's not as difficult. It's kind of a safe place to start. It's not too.
It's where I started.
It's where all of us have started. So. Then you start looking at your nice little jars and everything. Then you go, okay, maybe I'll take on some peaches, or maybe I'll take on some applesauce, and then you build up from there. And then you start getting brave, and you go, maybe I'll do some tomatoes. And then you might want to take on the pressure canner. Speaking of pressure canner, can everybody see the steam coming out of the pressure canner? Well, it's been venting for a little while, so it's good. Yeah. So that's nice and hot. You don't want to get your hand in that. But you just put it on like that, and now we're going to wait. See, now this little vent just popped up. Okay, as soon as you put that lid on, this little thing pops up. And so now it's sealed, and in a little bit that's going to start rocking. And then we'll turn it off. So then you can all see what it looks like when it's ready to start the timing.
I found that was the most intimidating thing for me, because the one that I had bought didn't rock. It spun. And so I'm like, well...
What are you waiting? Yeah, it's like, is it ready?
How many times does it have to spin in a minute, And so what I ended up doing is...
Oh, I didn't put the sweetener in.
Mine had a gauge and the spinning. And so I ended up getting the weighted conversion, and now it's simple, because now the weight rocks. And now I know exactly how to do it. So
we're going to do this strawberry jam, and we're going to use honey. This is raw honey, and from local. And I'm going to put in about a half a cup. I might need to put in a little bit more, because it's 6 cups of jam. So we find honey tastes great in it. You can do it by your own taste, but if you want to use a raw sugar, or you want to use stevia, or you want to use like a sucanut or a coconut sugar, all those work fine. It's to your taste preferences, and they're all healthier than... we don't have white... I shouldn't say we don't. We do have white sugar in our home, but it's for our bees. And for wound care. It's not for us. Not for us internally. Okay. I might put in just a little bit more. Okay, so now we're going to heat that up. Okay, do you want to take it there? Okay, so we get that going. I just need to rinse my hand. I got honey on my hand. We can actually probably turn the dehydrator off so it doesn't Overdo it. Okay. Now dehydrating is quite simple. You don't have to blanch things first, I don't believe. I never blanched anything first with. But with freezing, you do want to blanch things first. Not your fruits, but your vegetables. And so if you're doing like your green beans or things like that, you would blanch it just for a couple minutes, strain it in the colander, stick it in your freezer bag, get your straw out and suck out the extra air, because air is not your friend when it comes to being in the freezer. You want as much air out as possible and as much water out as possible, so you want to strain them really well. And then put them in your freezer. Now the thing I have against freezers, I do use freezers. I put blueberries in them. My children love to eat blueberries for breakfast, frozen blueberries. So we will freeze blueberries and strawberries and things like that for smoothies, but I do not use it for a majority of preserving. And the reason why is, one, is that it doesn't keep it well forever. You start to get freezer burn and things like that, and things get kind of get left in there. The other reason is because I've lost a whole freezer full before. And it is not fun to work so hard in your harvest. I put all my zucchini up, and that year I put a majority of my tomatoes up that way because of we had a couple other things going on. And something happened to the freezer. It got unplugged, and you didn't know it until there was water all over the ground leaking from it, and I lost everything. So don't put all your eggs in that basket. You can put all your eggs in the canning basket, because you might have one jar go off here or there, which I've really not, I've really rarely ever had anything go off. But you might have one or two, but you're not going to lose your whole harvest. So be careful with freezing. Put things by for your smoothies and for things like that, but I wouldn't put all your eggs in that basket for those reasons.
Yeah, mostly if a jar goes off, it's right away that it hasn't sealed, and you can
and you can reseal it. Okay, so that's a good point. We're going to be showing that. Let's see. We'll talk about the sealing of jars in just a moment. I'm going to get...
Do you want another? I can move over.
No, you're good for now, so keep going. Keep heating that up. Okay, so we have the applesauce here. So this is what apples look like when they are cooked down. I don't know if everyone can kind of see that a little bit. They're just cooked down, and it was just cooked with a little bit of water. And then what we have here, you can get, now Pam has one that's called Aroma strainer, and but this is a hand food mill. So either way, whether you have, and she can put through some of her food raw, like the pears for making pear sauce. You can put tomatoes and pears through raw. It's strong enough to grind it up and separate the skins and everything like that. This, you would have a hard time with raw. So this is where it's cooked down. But we do all our applesauce and pear sauce and things like that with this. We're out in the nature here. Got grass going in there. Got it. Joys of camping. Okay, so I'm going to get, do I have Denisha or Carlene will come up? Okay, great. And what we're going to do, this is where our metal bowls come in handy. I think this one will work, except that I got to wipe it out. Get grass and everything. Had it wiped out. Okay, so this one, see, they have a nice handle here and the level, and it just sits on top of your pot or on top of a bowl. And what you do is you put it in there and you just grind it through, and it separates all your seeds and all your skins. And then you can empty the pot into another pot as it gets. That's where I get my bigger ones. When we're doing large amounts of applesauce, I'll have a smaller one that's easy for it to sit on, and then I'll keep emptying it into the bigger bowls. And then if you want to add a little bit of sweetener, you can. I add very little with applesauce, especially when they're in season. McIntosh, Cortland, your soft apples make the best applesauce. Hard apples like the Ida Reds and the Empires are your storage apples for your root cellar. So they usually come a little bit later anyways. First apples that come in the season usually are your soft apples, which are your applesaucing apples. And a nice tart one, having some tart mix in there at least with your Cortland and your McIntosh, just make a nice applesauce. It really does. It's our favorite. And you really don't need much sweetener, if any. So I might, in a big bowl that has like 9 liters of applesauce, I might put in a half a cup of sweetener, of honey or of whatever. And that, so you do that to preference. You can put a little bit more or a little bit less or nothing. That it would still be fine. So Let's see, where can I get you working with this? I'm going to move this, and I'll just have you right here. Be careful of that there. I'll just move this canning pot down for right now. If you want to just hold that right there so it doesn't fall. Okay. And I'll get you another bowl to put it in.
This past year
Okay.
we tried doing pear applesauce, and the children just
I'll
loved
get you
it.
the ladle.
Pears are naturally sweet, but they have a more runny applesauce.
Oh, she took it.
And the apples are thicker, but not as sweet.
That's okay.
And so we combined the two together, and it's absolutely beautiful.
I'm going to train you. Okay. Trade you, not train you. Trade you. I meant trade you.
Yeah, I don't think we should use it. It's not silicone. It's going to melt in there.
No, that's high heat.
Oh,
That's
okay. I was worried about that.
Peppered chef. Yeah. Okay, I'm just that's okay. You can mix a little bit of strawberries with the apples. That's okay. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about is when you're preparing your jars. The one thing that can be really daunting is people going, okay, they have to sterilize all their jars. And go with what you feel best. But for myself, in the rule of thumb is if you're going to only process something in the water canner for 10 minutes or less, then you need to sterilize your jars. So I process my jam and my applesauce for 12 to 15 minutes, and I don't have to worry about sterilizing my jars. I wash them in hot soapy water and rinse them in hot water, and they're fine, and I've never had anything go off. So I'm not telling you to do that. You can go ahead and sterilize your jars if you want to.
See, anything past 10 minutes, you're okay.
Anything past 10 minutes, you're okay. That's the rule of thumb. So they say if jams process 10 minutes, put them in for a couple of minutes longer, and then you don't have to worry about that extra step, because I was always scared of putting jars in the oven and bringing out really super hot jars and everything, and so I find it better to work that way. Now, when your jars have sealed, like once you've taken them out of the canner, you're going to set them on the counter, and you're going to just let them, I usually put a towel down, and I just line them all up nice and pretty. You'll hear them start snapping. Don't touch the lids, don't test them until the jars are good and cool. Give them 12 hours, give them a few hours, just let them be, and they will suck in themselves. And if you do have a jar that you find that didn't seal for whatever reason, you can just open it up. Sometimes something got, during the boiling process, maybe the lid wasn't tight enough, and some food got in between the lid and the rim. Just wipe that off, maybe put on a new lid, and reprocess it with the next batch. So it'll still be fine. You haven't lost it. It's when you go into the cupboard after a few months and you find one that is unsealed itself, throw it out. Okay? But like I said, that rarely happens. Okay, everybody, can you see? We got a little rocking going on. All right? And at that point, you can turn down the heat a little bit just so that it keeps a nice, gentle rocking. We're just going to turn it right off anyways and let the pressure go down. Yeah, we could let it go. So it'll start to really rock really hard. But this is a nice, gentle rock right now. You just want a nice, just a gentle rocking. And so then you can start your timer. I would turn down the heat just a little bit because, when you first put it up on high and you're bringing it to a boil, then you could put it down to maybe number 7, kind of like that area, and that would be a nice holding pattern because it'll start to get rocking a little too much. And so then that's all there is to it. And then when you're done and the timer's done, you just turn off the heat and wait till that's all calmed down and stops rocking, and this pressure thing will go down. Then the pressure's all out and you can open it up, and that's safe. Because I got the little pressure, it's like a little nail that's sticking up. And, okay.
A useful tip that somebody showed online is when you see that gentle rocking,
Yeah.
and you turn it down,
Just dump that out. It'll be easier if you...
We'll
just dump that out.
Like a piece of tape or something that
And then just grind it a little bit more. I got grass in there. That's okay. It's us eating it. Okay. Not done yet? Yes, question. Okay. I can't hear you. I'm going to come by you, and then I can repeat your question for everybody.
So the fruits and vegetables are cooked. How much nutrients do you think is retained after all of that?
Well, Spirit of Prophecy actually answers that because you're not cooking them necessarily a long time. So she asked, she goes, because in the canning process you're ending up cooking the fruits and vegetables, how much nutrients are left? we kind of live in the raw food age where they say raw everything is best. And yes, eating a lot raw is very good for you. Spirit of Prophecy does say that coarse vegetables like carrots and things like that are better cooked. But she says preserving your food, where you're processing it like this, putting it up in glass jars, holds the nutrients and the values. Actually, I want to get the book. I want to read. Is it still being passed around, the canning book? Could I just borrow it for a second? Yeah, the canning one. Okay, because... Okay. Canning food, okay, it says canning food properly is a healthy way to preserve your food because it holds its mineral content, and once it's preserved, it slows down the loss. Like once you pick a vegetable from the garden, the vitamin A and the vitamin C start to deplete rapidly. When you preserve it, that actually slows down any depletion of the vitamin A and vitamin C. And all the other vitamins stay close to the fresh food levels. So you're keeping your nutrients in doing this if you're doing it properly. She says, use little sugar, cook the fruit only long enough to ensure its preservation. Thus prepared, it's an excellent substitute for fresh fruit. That is why our recipes, I raw pack. I do what's called raw pack. I don't cook my fruit first, then put it in the jar, then can it. I blanch my peaches, slice them, put them in the jar, little bit of sweetener of choice, water, and then and lemon, and then you put it in so they're raw and they're getting their process time of 25 minutes. So they're going to be it's almost as good as having it fresh. And so it says actually the canning process actually may help to enhance nutrient profiles of certain foods. A half cup of canned pumpkin contains over 600% of the recommended daily intake of vitamin A, while the same amount of fresh pumpkin only has 140%. So it's the same thing like when you have tomatoes. They're excellent to eat raw, but when you cook them, you get higher levels of lycopene from them. So there's benefits both ways. So God is good. He helps us to get blessings from both. Okay, so now what I'm going to have you do, I have some washed and clean jars here. And this is where, the next step, what you do, you need it's good to have a good set of tools. You can get them at your Canadian Tire and whatnot. Just get a little package. You got a good funnel, you got your jar lifter, and which lifts the jars this way, and this goes for picking out the lids. It's a little magnet on the end. I barely use that really, but okay. So what we're going to have Carlene do now is she's just going to take and she's going to put the applesauce into the jars. Actually, just let me put just a touch of sweetener in that, just a little bit. Because those are not fresh apples, like they're not. I'm just going to mix it in just a little bit, not very much. Go ahead and stir that in. Okay. Let's see. Now she's going to put those into the jars, and what you do is that once you have filled your jars, you wipe your rim, put your lids on, and finger tighten. And then you're going to put it into your water canner. So you don't even need to bring them to boiling. That's enough. We can turn that off now, and that can be then processed right after into the other jars. Okay, so with the Pomona Pectin, you don't need to cook your fruit a long time. Back in the olden days, even before they had citrus, like they had this Pectin, people would cook their fruit for 45 minutes to build up the pectins that are naturally in the fruit to try and have it to set. But you're cooking it for so long, you're losing more and more of the nutrients. With the Pomona Pectin, we blended it, we put it in there, you just bring it to a boil, take it right off, and put it into your jars and boil it for 10 minutes, 12 minutes in your water canner, and you're done. And you've got fresh fruit. And so we're going to do that now. Yes. Well, it thickens after because it's still hot. And so then it'll start to set. Even on the counter, it will start to set. Like, once you've canned it, you bring them out and it'll start to set and everything. So, and Rosetta, you had a question? Oh, okay.
Are you adding the pectin to the apples?
No, I don't add them to the apples because you want it like a sauce.
So if you're not using any sugar in your applesauce,
No, no. Yeah, I do. Like I said, I usually in one of my big pots, I'll put maybe a half a cup kind of thing, or so. In that, if you're just wanting to make sure that there's a, but it's really not necessary to keep it. But it does help give it just a little bit. Enhances the flavor just slightly in that. So I do put in a little bit for preservation in that, but you don't need very much at all.
Headspace on jars.
Okay, the headspace on jars. Good point. Thank you, Pam. So you don't want to fill it. You don't want to fill it up to the rim. Okay, you fill it to the neck because you want to have a little bit of space. Because while it's cooking in there for 12 minutes, it's going to bubble a little bit, right? So you need to have that little bit of space there.
You don't want it too low either.
And you don't want it too low either, because then you're getting too much oxygen that you're leaving in there, which depletes the quality of the fruit and the shelf life. So right to the neck, and then you're going to wipe the rim as Pam just did with paper towels. Fine.
To minimize your spilling, you're using the funnel, but there's always going to be a little bit that's going to come on the rim, and you use a clean cloth or clean paper towel.
Clean cloth or clean paper towel. And so, even when you're using the funnel, she said, you still end up sometimes having spillage, especially when you're going fast. So you just want to make sure that you wipe the rim nice and clean. Your lids are all nice and clean. Then you put them on and finger tighten. Okay, so we can, go ahead.
Don't ever want to put it on a cold countertop. Always put a cloth underneath your hot jar before setting it down.
Good point. Okay, so I always put down a dish towel. When I take my jars out of the canner, or even when I'm filling them up if there's a hot liquid or whatever, put them on a dish towel. You don't want to put them on a cold counter. You just want to minimize any where there could be hot meeting cold and cause a jar to crack or whatever. The other thing is that when you're canning and going from batch to batch, see right now the water that's in here is not hot, right? Pam, how about we lift this and put it onto the one where the strawberry is? And so then let's just say I finished boiling this batch and I have more jars to go in. And how many burners are on here? Because we might need a couple of them on.
Sorry, I can relight the one I turned. Do you have the bottles in the pot already?
Did you turn off? You turned off that one, right?
Yep.
Okay. I don't have the bottles in the pot already. We're filling them right now. And so right now, we've got to move quickly before the water heats up too much. Okay, so the water is just room temperature right now. So,
That's the part I wanted to ask about.
okay.
You showed that part.
Yes. They have in the water canner, it comes with a rack like this. And you can put 7 1-liter jars into there. And I think it's a little bit more for the 500 milliliters. I can't remember. It's a couple more. But it's 7 jars, 7 liters can go in there. And what you can do is it's got a little edge on there. You just put it like that. You set them in there. And then you can set them down into the water. And I'm wondering if this isn't going to be warm enough. Because that's quite warm. Do you think that's going to crack going in there? The other thing is that if you've got hot food, make sure your water is a little bit warmer. So we do need to warm that up just a little bit. You know what, but if there's only enough to go in a 500, maybe just put it in one of those. Hopefully we have enough for the jam. I think we do. So, and that's no problem. Okay. So Carlene's filling up our jars for us. So we'll have some applesauce and some strawberry jam that we'll put into the water bath. And we'll put them on for 12 minutes. When you set your timer with the water bath is when the water starts to boil. So you put your jars in there and you start heating it up. And once the water starts to boil, because usually you put it on high, I'll turn it down to like number 7 so that it's a nice soft boil. And that's when you start your timer. And you put it on for the 12 minutes, and when it's done, you just turn it off. And then you can take your the jar holder right here. See, this handle is the part that goes for your hands. It's got little roll handles there. And it just fits to the neck of your jar just like that. So then you don't have to touch the hot water.
You will burn your hands.
Otherwise, you will burn your hands. So these are a great invention. You can't have enough of them. Well, I guess you can, but you need to have a couple of them in case one breaks or something. So, did you have a question?
What about botulism?
Botulism, their biggest, the ones that they say, you're talking about your vegetables and your tomatoes, that there might be a concern for that. But if you I've never had a problem. I've been raw packing tomatoes and processing them for 45 minutes in the water bath with just a tablespoon of lemon in there for years, and I've never had one go off. You do want to make sure that you process it properly. Have a clean surface. Wash your vegetables, your produce properly. Prepare them, like blanch them properly, drain them, then put them in your jars and process them properly, and you shouldn't have any problems with that. So if you maintain, obviously in your kitchen you're going to have a clean surfaces, you're going to have that. So if you maintain that, then you'll be fine. Now the other part, there are some vegetables and fruits, tomatoes being one of them, and peaches. And I don't have freestone peaches to show you right now because they're not in season until the end of August. Now there are clingstone and there's freestone. You want freestone. Trust me. You want freestone. They are the best for making peaches because they fall right off the pit. The clingstone, they cling to the stone. That's why they're called clingstone. And you'll get mush. You know what? Those ones you have to make peach jam out of because you will not get slices off of them nicely. So wait till the freestone come out. And the other thing is that the freestone also peel really nicely. Now when you blanch something, whether it's a peach or a tomato, you're going to put it into boiling water. Did we turn off that one burner? Actually, we lost the water. Uh-oh. Okay, maybe we'll just have to talk about it. We boiled down our water. Sure. You think it'll be fine? Okay, so we're just gonna. Okay, she'll flip it over and roll it around. Here's a spoon. You can play with it instead of your finger. And you're just going to put it in for 30 to 60 seconds. And then what you're going to do, you know what? We need a little bowl of cold water. That's a good point. Because when I'm doing my peaches, I fill my. This is kind of the process that we have. This will be for. We need cold water for that. Just enough to dunk the tomato in. So this is how I'll set up for doing peaches or tomatoes. Is that I've got the pots boiling on the stove of hot water to put my tomatoes or my peaches in. And I've got my sinks full of cold water. And then I have a nice big metal bowl on that side and a metal bowl by the pots. I will take my ladle and I will scoop out the peaches and the tomatoes once they have blanched and put them into that bowl. So I'll put in a whole pot full and then I'll scoop them out and I'll dump them in the sink and then let them be there for a minute. And then you take them out of there and put them into the bowls. Then I'll take them to the table where my family, all my children, are there waiting. And they'll sit there and they'll peel the peaches. They'll take the skins off the tomatoes. And then we move to the chopping and the slicing and that sort of thing. So the skin comes off. Where did Gabriel go with it? She's coming right back. Is it already splitting?
It's already splitting.
Okay, so what you'll see with the tomato, the skin will split. Maybe you can, I don't know if that's... Yeah. Okay, so that's the process. Your hardest, the ones that are the most intensive for canning, when it comes to your regular canning, is your peaches and your tomatoes. They are the messiest and the most intensive steps because of the blanching, the slicing, and the juiciness and everything like that. Your pears are easy. Okay. Can you see? See how she's peeling off the skin? Look how it just comes right off. Maybe just walk up and down a little bit and show them. They can kind of see. I guess she got we can just put it there and she can. I'll eat that up for lunch. Okay.
Can you can it with the skin?
You can it with. Who's asking that? Put your hand up. Oh, there you go. Hi. I just heard the voice. I'm like, that sounds like Camille. You can it with the skin. It's totally up to you. You can. Especially your smaller tomatoes, if you want to do whole tomatoes, you're not going to sit there and peel all of them. That's a big pain. Just throw them all in. It all depends on whether you like skins in your sauce or not. I don't like skins in my sauce necessarily. And there are different things that you can do with tomatoes. You can do sauces, you can do tomato paste, you can do your raw pack. I usually just do raw pack and tomato paste because out of those two things I can make all the sauces I want through the winter. And because we do such a large amount for our family, I don't have the time to sit there and watch the sauces get to the right level. So the tomato paste you're cooking down to get really thick anyways. And your raw pack, you just blanch them, chop them up, and keep pressing them and stuff them in the jar. Throw in your lemon and salt and process them. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So you can do that, yeah. And so whether you do it with the skin and chops or not, like when I do the raw pack, that's what it is. I chop up my tomato and I quarter them. I just chunk, and then I press them into the jars. Or if you have smaller tomatoes, you can put them in whole if you like whole tomatoes. I like chopping mine all up. And so it's like I can make chunky sauces, or I can blend them in the Vitamix and have smooth sauces. And what was your question? You had your hand up? How long do you process or blanch the peaches versus the tomatoes? Same time. Only 30 to 60 seconds. Dump them into the cold water, and 30 to 60 seconds, put them into the bowl, and then send them to your family to start processing. Yes, Sandy? Okay, so this is a good question. This is a very good question. They say, to be on the safe side, that it's better to use bottled lemon because it's already a balanced pH and you might not have the right pH. Because, especially if you're using acidic tomatoes, you don't have to have the lemon in them. I use fresh lemon because I like the taste better. I don't like the taste of bottled lemon, and it just wrecks it for me. So I use fresh lemon, even though I know it's not a balanced necessarily pH, but I've never had a problem. The salt is what really preserves. So if you've got your right amount of salt in there, you throw in some lemon as extra precaution, I've never had a problem. Especially when you process it with tomatoes, my raw pack, you process it for 45 minutes in the water canner.
Do you use a wood stove or just a gas stove?
Right now, in the home that we're renting on a farm, I can't have my wood stove hooked up, but we do. My friend Pam cans with her wood stove, and so and with propane as well. So you can can with all of them. It's just a matter of watching the boiling, right? And with the pressure canner, you're going to know whether it's rocking or not. So then you got to keep the fire going, keep it rocking. With that, you're going to keep the water boiling. It's fairly simple. It's not necessarily a precise temperature thing. Okay. Okay, so these are ready to go into the water canner. So we've got some applesauce made. Doesn't that look good? And it wasn't too difficult. Whoops. Oh, don't burn your fingers. I guess it's not hot yet.
No, it's not hot yet.
Okay. And
So this is my
this is
main pet peeve about this. Just put it down in the water.
You know what? Pam and I are on the same page. They all say they need to redesign this. Husband, here's a job maybe you want to take on. Because you set them on the edge, but then you go to put your jars in it and they all fall into it doesn't hold them steady. So we just put the thing right down on the bottom, and we just go ahead and put the jars in. And then you go like that. Now we can turn the temperature up, and we just put the... Okay, the other thing is that the water generally should cover the lids. Okay? I don't have enough water in here for the applesauce, but it'll be fine. We'll eat it when we get home anyways. This is just for demonstration.
Just for these ones so they can see how.
Yeah. Why don't we just use this water?
Over here.
Okay, so if it, afterwards, in just a moment, maybe... oh, that one still needs a little bit more. You know, why don't we just move the location of that jar to the deeper side?
This is
There we go.
canning, so we're going to use all the water we can find around here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And do we have the heat off of that? That's still...
A good half inch to an
Woo!
inch.
There's still lots of pressure in that. Okay. Just go ahead. She said a good half an inch.
To an inch, depending, because you're going to have this boiling. Sometimes for jam it's just 10 minutes, but for other things it might be a half hour.
Yes. She made a really good...
To not run out of water on top of the lid.
You got to, yeah. So what you do, especially when you're canning like your peaches, which are going to go for about 25 minutes, you want to make sure it's a good inch above the top of the jar because it's going to boil down, right? With the jams, you're not so concerned because they're in there for 12 minutes. Kevin?
Does the water seep into the jar?
No, it's a good question. Okay, Kevin asked, does the water seep into the jar? It will if you haven't done your lids up tight. So what you want to do, generally, when you've got your lids, we call finger tighten. You're going to wipe your rims, you're going to put on your lid, and you're going to go like this, and then you're going to tighten. Okay? You shouldn't have a problem with that because in the boiling, sometimes the lids will loosen a little bit, but you just do the finger tight and put it in, and you shouldn't have a problem. And then there won't be the water going in. And if anything, if you fill your jar up too much, it'll put pressure and you'll have it pushing to go out, and that's where you will get a bad seal. That's why it's important to only fill to the neck. Okay, and then the other thing is that for some things, like when you're doing your peaches and pears and stuff, once you've filled it to the neck with the hot water, you're going to want to stir, like just put a knife in there and just stir it around to get out any trapped air bubbles, because air bubbles are not your friend in canning. They will shorten your shelf life, they will make the fruit not last as well or whatever. It's just get the air bubbles out and then seal it up and process it, okay? Now, let's see. Now what I have here too is I have a demonstration of sauerkraut. How many people here have ever had sauerkraut? Okay, there's a lot of people that have had sauerkraut. Does anyone know the benefits of the health of the benefits too of sauerkraut? I grew up with sauerkraut. My family's Ukrainian on my mom's side, and so I grew up eating sauerkraut. Now, sauerkraut, when properly done, is just your cabbage, and if you have any other vegetables in there, like I like it with onion. So I do cabbage and onion, and your salt. Your pickling salt, okay? And you just mix that together, and then you chop it all up and you mix it together, and then you start pressing down till all the juices come up. And this one, the juices are beginning to come up now, so you'll be able to see this and come and take a look in the pot.
What's the traditional way?
The traditional way is...
With your feet.
Oh, the traditional way. I have pictures with Lily where I washed her feet very, 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 very well. And where I put her into the stock pot and she stomped on it. You know, that's what people did. They would, because to press it down well. But just pressing it down like this, you can feel the juices coming up, and I can show you that. And so this one we just chopped up this morning. The juices are coming up. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put a lid on and have it pressed down, and I will put something like a jar of water on top to weight it down, because then it keeps the liquid on top of the cabbage. And I usually only let mine sit for 10 days to 2 weeks maximum. That's when it's at its peak with the probiotics. There's tons of probiotics in there. This is way more powerful with probiotics than going and buying probiotics from the store. And you can also make a sauerkraut juice so that you don't have to eat the sauerkraut every day. It's actually really good. My children like it. So it's you'd be surprised. So say this was 2 weeks later and I'm ready to process this to preserve it. Let's say I've done a big batch. I would just fill up my jars and you water process it for 15 minutes, and that's it.
Fill your jars with what? Water?
The sauerkraut, no, and you just use the juices and just keep pressing it down. It'll have its own juices in there, so you don't need to add any water to it.
So what do you do with the juice that comes on top?
The juice that comes on top, well, it's all a part of it. So then when I go to can it, I just fill it up all in the jars and press it all in and just pour the rest of the juice and stuff with it.
Stir it together, right? So
Yeah, you stir it together and then that's what you pack in the jars. So then you've got all those probiotics in it. And you lose very little even in canning it, water canning it for 15 minutes. It's still got lots of good nutrients and everything.
Can you give us proportions? Cabbage, onions, salt?
Those recipes are in the book because there's different ones. My grandma, my grandma always did her recipes were like this much of this much of that, and just a handful of salt, and that kind of thing. So I do have better proportions of that. But yes, there is the right proportions. Same thing with fresh pickles. Has anyone ever had fresh dill pickles? Oh, they are so good. It's just pickles, lots of garlic, lots of dill, and your salt and water. And about 5 days, and you just eat them fresh. They are so good. They're the best. But no vinegar. We do not use vinegar. You can add lemon with it. We've got recipes for doing pickles with lemon as well as the salt.
I was going to ask, is there health that we should not eat fermented?
That's to do with when you have your fruits. You would never ferment your fruits because sweet foods, instead of the culturing any healthy bacteria going, the alcohol would take precedence. But when you've got something like cabbage, which has no sweet in it, the process is a lactic acid process, and so it's called lactic acid fermentation. It does not have the alcohol at all. It's a lactic acid process. So if you're going to go to your sweeter things, then you might want to, we don't do that, and we don't recommend that. But and with the pickles, we don't have pepper or vinegar in them. Those are the things that she spoke against being in those. But when it's just your dill and your garlic and your cucumber, then it's something that's still healthy for you. Okay, vinegar, when you have, for instance, with your sauerkraut, if I let this go for weeks and weeks and weeks, eventually the healthy bacteria will have eaten everything healthy, okay? If you let that process go for weeks and weeks, it would eat everything that's healthy, and all you would have left is vinegar, okay? Vinegar in and of itself, maybe you could answer that even better, Sandy, in a better, you can correct me if I say something wrong about it, but vinegar has no more nutrients in it left for your body, and for your body to process the vinegar actually steals from your body to get that stuff through your body. It inhibits, I believe, carbohydrate digestion, so we don't use vinegar. And that's why, when you have the sauerkraut at the 10 days to maximum 2 weeks, you're at the height. It's full of probiotics, full of all that. It's not vinegar because there's still all those nutrients in there, and it's brought out all the nutrients in the cabbage as well. There was one thing where it said that I can't remember what nutrient it was that it increased by 200% doing that process, and then it made it bioavailable for your body. But if you let it go for weeks, it would be vinegar, and then it would not be good for you anymore. Vinegar is great for cleaning and for disinfecting. Spray it on your children's hands when they're playing with strange toys and things. Very hard on the stomach, so we do not recommend it. Okay, question.
I know vinegar is not good, but a lot of people, like myself, our families love ketchup.
Yes.
It has a lot of vinegar.
We have some great in our canning book, in our cookbook. We have some. Oh, I'm sorry. She said that they love ketchup, and ketchup has a lot of vinegar in it, and it's true, it does. So what do you do when you love ketchup? You know what's great is in our cookbook we have some fantastic ketchup recipes, and you know what? And we have a mustard recipe that has absolutely no mustard in it, but it tastes just like mustard. It is so good. And relishes and things. We have those recipes. No vinegar. You can use things like lemon instead, homemade. There's simple things that you can do to make a fantastic ketchup without having to compromise and get the vinegar. So and
Vinegar is again, your carbohydrates are digested in your mouth. So you could repeat.
The vinegar. Say that again.
When you have vinegar on a carbohydrate and it goes in your mouth at the same time, it's going to retard the digestion.
Okay, so I'm repeating for her what she said, that when you have vinegar in something, because digestion begins in the mouth. That's why we've got to chew our food, especially with carbohydrates. Our digestion starts in the mouth. It's very important to chew our food thoroughly. Enough can't be said about that. In fact, we could talk more about that. But when you have vinegar, that retards that beginning digestion, which really inhibits, because then your stomach has to deal with stuff that hasn't even begun digesting. Sandy? What are your thoughts on apple cider vinegar? Because
that's the same thing as vinegar. Very little difference.
Very little difference. It's still vinegar. Now, apple cider vinegar is fantastic in the natural remedies kit. They are fantastic. You need to have apple cider vinegar on hand for that. But again, it's like white sugar. White sugar, fantastic for wound care, along with honey. Honey you can put in your body still. White sugar, no. Vinegar, no. In the natural remedies and for things like that, yes. So that's where it's just learning these things and the places for them.
It would be like cayenne pepper. You wouldn't want to be eating that all day long.
Yeah.
Medicinally.
Yeah, cayenne pepper. You can eat cayenne pepper. You wouldn't want to be eating it all the time because it can be an irritant and everything. But in your natural remedies kit, it's a must. As well. But you can eat a little bit of it. It's just kind of learning what things and what their place is and how to make for better health, better food. And so is it coming to a boil yet?
It's harder on a camping stove, guys. This will happen a lot faster on your stove at home.
Okay, so I just want to show, you saw the 1 liter jars and the 500 milliliter jar. Now this, you can get up to 2 liter jars. Now I use these kind of 2 liter jars for pickles because I'm not going to necessarily be water bathing them. These don't really fit well in a water bath. But what you can do is you can get a rack. See, this is a 20-liter stock pot, which if you're going to do serious canning is fantastic to have on hand. I've got 2 of these. And when I'm doing, these are for applesauce and for your sauces and your tomato paste. Cooking things down in large amounts. But you can also get a rack to go in the bottom of them, so that if you have a taller jar like that, you can still water process them if you want to do larger jars of stuff. Never can without a rack at the bottom, or you'll have an explosion. Always need a rack. That's why there's the rack that keeps the jars from touching the very bottom. There are various kinds, but there has to be holes in it. It has to be a rack with some kind of holes in it to allow the water to bubble through and that. Never put it directly on the bottom, please. Never do that. Okay. Now, when I take these out, let's say I've taken everything out, like we'll be taking it out of there. You're going to put it on your dish towel on your counter, and you're going to let them be for a while, okay? Now, I have some more to go into the next canner. And they might be hot in the jar, like fairly warm still, but that water is way hotter than even what I've having just cooked and put into that jar. You don't want to do that. So I take a scoop, and I just scoop out. I have just like a big pitcher. I'll scoop out half the amount of the boiling water and just dump it. And then I'll put cold water back in to bring the temperature down closer to what my jars are. It can be a little bit warmer, but that will reduce. It's a little bit extra effort, but it will reduce your risk of jar breakage. Because when you take even a warm jar and put it into boiling hot water, that jar just might go. And because, it builds up pressure too fast and it's just too hot. So you want to just kind of balance that out a little bit. So take out some of the hot water, put in some cold till it gets to be a decent temperature, put your next load of jars in and get boiling it. Now, if you don't like using that much water, there are canners. I don't have one. We've talked about getting them, a steam canner. It's like a shallower dish with water in it, but then it's got the top. It almost looks like the whole setup is upside down. It just doesn't seem right when you look at it. But what it does is it uses steam to it. And I haven't used those. I don't have experience with those. But you're fine with the water canner. They're inexpensive. I know the steam canners can run a little bit. I'm not sure what they are, but they can be price-wise a little bit. But you can check into them as well and try them as well.
As you mentioned, put in the bottle in the hot water, you might want to also mention if they have sterilized the bottles and they're hot.
If you choose, because I don't sterilize my jars because I boil everything past the 10-minute mark, but if you do sterilize your jars, let them cool down a little bit before you put even your hot liquid into them. And just remember to have hot mitts and things like that because you'll... Oh, and if you raw pack like I do, like with your tomatoes and your peaches, they're cold. You don't want to put them into hot jars, so your sterilized jars needs to get cooled right down before you put anything into them. Obviously, it's just that rule of thumb, being careful about the drastic temperature change with your jars. And jars should last you, if you treat your jars well, your jars should last you a really long time. But the covers don't.
You want to get new, or at least, yes, you want to get new. If you're just starting out, you absolutely just want to get new.
This is one of my issues where they turn something into, it's a good business. You have to, with these snap jars, these mason jars, it's very convenient. It's nice to hear the snap and to be able to check that. The old-fashioned way my grandma always did, she had the rubber rings and the glass lids. And those rubber rings could be used again and again and again. And you could buy a big pack of those rubber rings and you were fine. I do reuse my snap lids carefully. You just check to make sure there's no dings on them and that they're clean, that they're not no rust, that sort of thing, and you're fine to reuse them again.
But I would say if you're just starting out,
get new ones.
Get new ones. They're not that expensive. Even Dollarama has them.
Yeah, and it's good. So. It's good to get a few packages of them on hand, to kind of stock some away, because when the time of no buy no sell comes, you're not going to be able to buy anymore.
But the rings, you can reuse them until they're rusty.
Forever. Yeah. In fact, when your jars are processed, you could take the rings off and store them that way without the rings. If you're short on rings and you need them for the next batch or something like that. I've had to do that before if I was short on rings. But, okay. Did we want to pass around any zucchini chips and stuff? Does anyone want to taste a zucchini chip? Yes.
Sorry, I missed the part. What did you do with the cabbage?
Okay. No, it's not. This is not cooked. This was raw. This morning, I wasn't sure how much time we would have for demonstrating. So, uh-oh. Is it still working? Okay. I chopped it up this morning with the onion and I threw in the salt. And then I let it sit. Like I mixed it all up well because then the salt starts to bring out the juices. Yeah. And and then like I said, you push down the juices, push it down until the juices are above the cabbage. And you can kind of see, well, I don't know if you can see it. We'll pass this around, or you'll be able to come up and see. Okay. And then what you would do is you would put a weight, like a nice clean rock. I use a jar with water sometimes and just put it on. And it'll just get that pressure on the plate to keep the juice above and the cabbage below. And you can just start checking it over the next 5 to 10 days, up to 2 weeks.
Traditionally, it's just a rock.
Traditionally, it's just a rock. Just a nice big stone, but you clean it really well. Okay, so... Okay, so then when it's done, after 10 days to 2 weeks, I just stuff it into my jar and I press it down. You use the juices that are already there. You just push it down and the juices, you just fill up, you mix it all together, then you just put it into all your jars. Fill it up to the neck. Fill it up to the neck. Maybe I'll turn that up a little bit. And we'll go like that. Fill it up to the neck and then I water process it for just 15 minutes. And then you store it. And then you've got cabbage through the winter. Delicious with mashed potatoes. Very good. The cabbage, no, there's the salt in the cabbage. It's just salt and cabbage, but I like to put onion as well. It's delicious. That's the way I grew up with it. My grandma always put onion in it.
I studied before the pressure.
Okay, so when you put your food in the pressure canner, we did not put food today in there, but you're saying you want me to repeat how you do that again? Or oh, it's not healthy to put in the pressure canner? Okay. Okay, well I don't, the thing is, when it comes to vegetables, you can water bath your vegetables, but you're going to be boiling them for a really long time. You're talking about like an hour and a half. The pressure canner brings that time down. She's saying that the pressure canner destroys the food value. I'll look more into that. I know that my grandma, she didn't have a pressure canner. She just water boiled it for a lot longer. And so you're saying that the water canning, even if you boil it for a lot longer, is still healthier than doing the pressure canning. But if you don't have an option of having a freezer, yeah, peaches and everything, but the vegetables need to be processed differently than the fruit because they would need to be like peas and corn, and that need to be boiled a lot longer than the peaches. Okay. The pressure canner is not healthy. So are you saying that if I took the peas, instead of putting them in there for 40 minutes and I put them in there for an hour and a half, then the water bath would still be healthier? Okay. I will look into that. I appreciate that because I have not done a lot with the pressure canner. I've done 90% of my canning with the water bath because we're not at the place when we're at the place where you no longer have electricity or electricity enough to support having a freezer, because a freezer is a big drain on off-grid living. So when you don't have that option, then you want to be able to can it. So I know that my grandma did can it, and I will look into the times that it would be needed if you don't have a pressure canner for the vegetables to be done on the water bath, and I will include that in my canning book. That's aggressive for food. The high heat and the pressure. Okay. I really appreciate that because, like I said, I have not done a lot with the pressure canner, and I will look into that. And in my canning book, I will include the times for vegetables to be done in the water bath, so that you have the option. If you want to do water bath, then you have the times appropriate for your beans, your peas, and things like that. So it's still safe, but that you could do it in the water bath instead of the pressure canner. Does that sound good? Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. You know, we're all learning and growing together, and I call ourselves monkeys in a barrel because, I don't know everything. None of us do, but I reach up to those who have experience and know, and I reach down to those to help, like to all of you, to help you to learn what the Lord has already shown me. And that's how we can grow together. Are there any other questions? How do you can peppers? Well, there's recipes for that as well. That's I haven't canned a lot of my peppers. I've dehydrated them instead. But the recipes are there as well because it's the same process. And I'm just checking this because it's boiling. Okay, so we got a boiling thing here. Does anyone want to set a timer? We'll just put it because it's already been boiling for a couple minutes, so we'll just let it go for another 10. And so if anyone, but once it starts boiling, that's when you start your timing. And let's see. The pressure has now gone down out of this. My little knobby's gone back down. Okay, and see. Thank you. And see, now I can take that back off. There's no more steam coming out, so your pressure canner is safer. Well, you know what? To be honest, I'd probably be happy just doing water canning because even though I know what to do with it, it's still a scary business. I had a pressure cooker once. I'll tell you that experience if you want a good laugh. I decided to cook some soybeans. My mom says, "Oh, you got to use a pressure cooker." So I started to cook my soybeans in the pressure cooker that my husband just got me from Canadian Tire. And at that time, it was just me and Nathan and Lily. I didn't have the 3 little ones. We were at our other farm. And all of a sudden, we hear this boom in the kitchen, and we all went to the entrance of the kitchen, and we stood there. It was like a fountain of beans on my ceiling and all over the floor and going everywhere, and we did not want to go anywhere near it. And after that, I said, I'm not using a pressure cooker. It scared me too much because, so I just cook my food the long way. Yes. Did you have a question?
No, I was just showing them what happens when the top piece of the
It just goes boom. It was like a fountain, like a geyser, like a volcano. It is very scary. We just stood there and watched it. Okay. So has this been helpful to you? Okay, and that's excellent. I'm glad to know. Oh, let's get some of these zucchini chips. These are delicious. I already tried.